Poland, 1939. Following the Russian invasion of Poland, hundreds of thousands of Polish civilians were forcibly removed from their homes. Some were killed in the streets, some men were arrested, and the majority of women and children were transported to civilian camps in Russia. This marked the beginning of a long and treacherous journey which lasted for 3 years and cost many their lives. One of the families removed from their home was the Kowalska family, and this is the story of Halina Kowalska, who was only 8 at the time.
I remember my father's blue eyes. They were always as blue as the sky on a nice day. My mother used to get annoyed because he was spoiling me dreadfully. I was allowed to do anything, and she even accused that I picked his accent because he was from Warsaw, and I was born in southeast of Poland. And that was the thing. We were so happy before the war. The family had a good life, and then the war came and everything ended. When the Russians came, we were told to welcome them because they were coming to help us to fight the Germans. And my father was told to make them welcome. Instead, they came and put my father and the other men under the wall with their hands up, holding guns against them. And then the KGB said to the people, was he Haroshi, which is good? And the people said, Haroshi. He was told he can drop his arms now, and the gun was not pointing at him. Then he asked, the KGB men asked, were the rest of the men Haroshi? And the people said, yes, they were Haroshi, except one who was, then when he said, try to run away, and they said they have to kill him and things, and that's how it's ended. After 2 days, they came knock on the door, took my father away, and my brother said, we have to say goodbye to my father now. He was taken to the police station, and I came and I saw him standing there, and I just grabbed his side of his trousers, crying, and the KGB said to me, don't cry, your father will be back in 3 days. And that was a joke, because it was nearly 3 years before we saw him again. We ourselves, my mama and my brother, were thrown from our house 3 times and ended in a shoemaker's house with just 1 suitcase between us and a bed. And that lasted 3 months. We didn't know nothing what was happening to my father. And then 2 o'clock in the morning on the 13th of April, there was a knock on the door, woke us up, and the KGB came, and he said, get ready, and we're going. We were taken to the police station. From there we were put on the carts and driven to the station, where we were put in a cattle track wagon. But we were lucky because we were first to enter that wagon, and it had no windows, anything, and the doors were big double doors with the things locked. But there was a shelf where they used to keep hay for the animals they were transporting, so we were lucky to get onto it, and that's where we stayed for 3 weeks until we reached Siberia. There were no toilets. There was a hole in the floor which was used as a toilet. No any coverage or anything. And in these horrible things as it was, there was time where we even smiled at that, because there was this young boy who, when he used the toilet, he wanted privacy, and he had some sort of shawl or what, which he covered his head because it wouldn't cover him all. And the other funny thing about it was that that shawl had a hole through which you could see his eye, but that was sufficient for him, and that was how we were traveling for 3 weeks. Sometimes the doors were open and we could go and relieve ourselves under the train. And they used to once a day bring us like hot water with something in it floating. That's all we had to eat. And traveled 3 weeks until we landed in Siberia in a station called Ktayancha. From their wagons we were then moved to a lorry, an open lorry, and traveled through the rest of the night 100 kilometers. It was so cold. That was the coldest day in my life. But my mother was with me and saying, "Don't lose hope. Things will change." And after the hours we traveled, we were brought up to a village called Bogoduhovka, and the Russian people that were there took us in, for which we were sort of paying them with the things from the suitcase that we had. My mother was ill. She was having a dreadful pain in her head. She wasn't lying, she was sitting and holding her head, and we didn't know what was wrong. And it lasted, can't remember exactly, 2 weeks or so. And then one day she suddenly called, and there was a thing from her nose, horrible stuff, hammering, breathing. We went to call this nurse that we knew, and she came and she said to us, "You better kneel down and thank God, because your mother had an abscess, and if it wasn't that she was sitting, she would be dead now. But the abscess, when it erupted, it came, found a way through her nostril, and then she got better." We stayed in Siberia for 2 years, and then Germany declared the war on Russia, and the Polish government that was in London approached Stalin and said, "You are holding these men prisoners when they could be fighting the common enemy now." So there was amnesty declared, and the prisoners, including my father, were released. And we traveled to Uzbekistan to meet our father. It was a long journey. We got to the main station, which was Novosibirsk, and there we had to get out of the train and spend the night to wait for the next connection. We were sleeping under the bed, under the bridge, and it was cold, and my mother was telling me, "Don't lose your faith. Soon you're going to see your father. Nie trać nadziei, Halina." We cuddled and spent the rest of the night. In the morning, the train arrived, and there were lots and lots of people because that was going to Uzbekistan and everybody wanted to get on it. There was a man who came and he actually had our ticket with us. He gave it to a woman this time who was taking it, and he gave it straight away, so she let him and his wife, but then she wouldn't let us because she said already that many people got in. It was getting really worrying. My brother managed to get where the two wagons joined together and things, but my mother and I were still outside. And then someone pushed me between people's legs, so I got inside and things. And the thing was that the train started to go. But luckily, in a way, it was because there was this bridge, so it didn't go too fast. When I saw my mother outside, I started screaming, "Mama, Mama!" I can remember it today. And then this KGB or whatever suddenly shouted at the woman, "How can you let the child get in and leave the mother outside?" And my mother was pulled inside the train, and we continued then our journey to Uzbekistan. On the train, we were happy because we were together with my mother, and the train wasn't like the one that took us to Siberia, not for animals, but for humans, and had seats and things. And so we were happy and excited of chance that we'll soon be meeting with my father. And the journey took only 2 days, not quite 2 days. And when we arrived there at the station was my father, and that was our reunion, one of the happiest days of my life. The time we spent together was short but special. But soon the army was moved to Italy, and we civilians, my mama and I, were moved to Persia and then to India, where we spent 5 years. Sometimes when I go to bed, I look first at the pictures on my dressing table of my parents and my brother, and I hear almost the words "Nie trać nadziei, Halina." That was my mother saying, and how right she was. The dreadful the things were, but they are over now, and I'm happy now to have my close family with me.
The Polish war refugees went on to live in new British camps set up in Persia and India, and began to recuperate whatever small elements of culture they could. After the war was over, Halina ended up moving to England aged 18 and meeting her husband Joseph, where they raised their family. Her story represents many untold stories from the war, and I am privileged to tell it all these years later, and to have such an inspiring woman that I can call my babcia, my grandmother.